Hello guys. Hi guys. Welcome back to another episode of our Kenyan Constitution. Leo tutaongelelea about chapter 4. Guys, chapter 4 is very big. This one is very big. Yeah, this one talks of the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights, but the good thing is it is divided into five parts. There's part 1. Part 1 talks of the general provisions relating to the Bill of Rights. Then we have part 2. Part 2 talks of rights and fundamental freedom. Then there is part 3. Part 3 which talks of let me see. Part 3 is very wide, guys. Part 3 itself is very wide. Let me see part 3. Part 3 talks of specific application of rights as part 3. And then part 4 talks of state of emergency. Then the last part talks of Kenya National Human Rights and Equality Commission. So because this chapter 4 is very wide, so what I'll do, the way they are divided into parts, I'll do part 1 on its own, then part 2 will have also an episode on its own, then part 3 and part 3, part 4 and 5, because I've seen they are a bit short, I'll put them together. I'll combine them together. So what are leo to tackle? Let us tackle chapter 4, Bill of Rights, part 1 only. Yeah, so we'll do part 1 only for this episode, then part 2 will follow. Okay guys, so Bill of Rights actually is very important. Yeah, the other episode was talking of citizenship. So tayari you've become a Kenyan citizen, wewe ni raia, either through birth, yeah, you are born in Kenya, or you are born by Kenyan parents, so you automatically become a Kenyan citizen. So now you become a citizen. So what are your rights? This one is going to tell us. Yeah, this chapter now is going to tell us our rights. So that is why it is called the Bill of Rights. So imepangwa, yeah, imepangiliwa vizuri sana. So let's go straight to part 1. So part 1 talks of the general provisions relating to the Bill of Rights. So I'll read. Rights and fundamental freedom. The Bill of Rights is an integral part of Kenya's democratic state and is the framework for social, economic, and cultural policies. The purpose of recognizing and protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms is to preserve the dignity of individuals and communities and to promote social justice and the realization of the potential of all human beings. And number 3 reads, the rights and fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights are, A, talks of, belong to each individual and are not granted by the state. So you have to enjoy all your rights as an individual. B, it talks of, B of the same article talks of, do not exclude other rights and fundamental freedoms not in the Bill of Rights, but recognized or conferred by law, except to the extent and they are inconsistent with this chapter. And C talks of are subject only to the limitations contemplated in this constitution. Let's go to the other number. This talks of application of Bill of Rights. So how you're supposed to apply your Bill of Rights, guys. How you're supposed to apply this Bill of Rights. Application of Bill of Rights. So this one, number 1 talks of the Bill of Rights applies to all law and binds all state organs and all persons. Every person shall enjoy the rights and fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights to the greatest extent, consistent with the nature of the right of fundamental freedom. Number 3 of the same article talks of in applying a provision of the Bill of Rights, a county shall no, I'm sorry for that. In applying a provision of the Bill of Rights, a court shall develop the law to the extent that it does not give effect to a right or fundamental freedom, and adopt the interpretation that most favors the enforcement of a right of fundamental freedom. Number 4 talks of in interpreting the Bill of Rights, a court, tribunal, or other authority shall promote the values that underlie an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, equity, and freedom, and also the spirit, purport, and objects of the Bill of Rights. Number 5 talks of in applying any right under Article 43, if the state claims that it does not have the resources to implement a right, a court, tribunal, or other authority shall be guided by the following principles. It is the responsibility of the state or to show that the resources are not available. B of the same article talks of in allocating resources, the state shall give priority to ensuring the widest possible enjoyment of the right of fundamental freedom, having regard to prevailing circumstances, including the vulnerability of particular groups or individuals, and the court, tribunal, or other authority may not interfere with a decision by a state organ concerning the allocation of available resources, solely on the basis that it will have reached a different conclusion. Let's continue, guys, to number 21. We are still part 1. We are still on part 1 of the Bill of Rights. Is implementation of rights and fundamental freedoms. Fundamental freedoms. It is a fundamental duty of the state and every state organ to observe, respect, protect, promote, and fulfill rights and fundamental freedoms in the Bill of Rights. Yeah? Nchi inafaa kulinda rights zako. Kwa sababu uko na haki wewe kama Mkenya. So nchi inafaa kukulinda kabisa ipasavyo. Number 2 of the same article talks of the state shall take legislative policy and other measures, including the setting of standards to achieve the progressive realization of the rights guaranteed under Article 43. And the next point talks of all state organs and all public officers have the duty to address the need of vulnerable groups within society, including women, older members of society, and persons with disability, children, youth, members of minority or marginalized communities and members of particular ethnic, religious, or cultural communities. The state shall enact and implement legislation to fulfill its international obligation in respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Enforcement of Bill of Rights is another point. How to enforce the Bill of Rights. Every person has the right to institute court proceedings, claiming that a right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights has been denied, violated, or infringed, or even threatened. Yeah. In addition to a person acting in their own interest, court proceedings under Clause 1 may be instituted by a person acting on behalf of another person who cannot act in their own name. B talks of a person acting as a member of or in the interest of a group or class of persons. C of the same article talks of a person acting in the public interest or an association acting in the interest of one or more of its members. Let's continue, guys. The Chief Justice shall make rules providing for the court proceedings referred to in this article, which shall satisfy the criteria that the rights of standing provided for in Clause 2 are fully facilitated. B. Formalities relating to the proceedings, including commencement of the proceedings, are kept to the minimum, and in particular that the court shall, if necessary, entertain proceedings on the basis of informal documentation. C talks of no fee may be charged for commencing the proceedings. D talks of the court, while observing the rules of natural justice, shall not be unreasonably restricted by procedural technicalities, and an organization or individual with particular expertise may, with the leave of the court, appear as a friend of the court. Now, you've heard of this. You can appear in court as a friend of the court. Yeah, you just apply, then you appear in court. Let's continue, guys. Let's continue. We are still on part 1 of the Bill of Rights, guys. Another point talks of the absence of rules contemplated in Clause 3 does not limit the right of any person to commence court proceedings under this article and to have the matter heard and determined by a court. Authority of courts to uphold and enforce the Bill of Rights is also another article in part 1. The High Court has jurisdiction in accordance with Article 165 to hear and determine applications for redress of a denial, violation, or infringement of or threat to a right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights. Number 2 talks of Parliament shall enact legislation to give original jurisdiction in appropriate cases to subordinate courts to hear and determine applications for redress of denial, violating, or infringement of or threat to a right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights. Number 3 talks of in any proceedings brought under Article 22, a court may grant appropriate relief, including a declaration of rights, an injunction, a conservatory order. Yeah, this is a conservatory order, guys. It is the most famous recently, remember, during the impeachment of Rigiji or Gachagua, the former deputy president. This one, he used this conservatory order to stop his impeachment so that he may be heard in court. Yeah, let's continue, guys, to the next one. A declaration of invalidity of any law that denies, violates, infringes, or threatens a right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights and is not justified under Article 24. The next one talks of an order of compensation and an order of judicial review. Let's go to the next article. Limitation of rights and fundamental freedom. Okay, so your rights are also limited, so don't over abuse them. don't abuse them. So this one talks of number one. Let's go straight to it. A right of fundamental freedom in the Bill of Rights shall not be limited except by law, and then only to the extent that the limitation is reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, and freedom, taking into account all relevant factors, including the nature of the right of fundamental freedom, the importance of the purpose of the limitation, the nature and extent of the limitation, the need to ensure that the enjoyment of rights and fundamental freedoms by an individual does not prejudice the rights and fundamental freedoms of others, and the relation between the limitation and its purpose, and whether there are less restrictive means to achieve the purpose. The next one talks of, despite a clause 1, a provision in legislation limiting a right of fundamental freedom is R, in the case of provision enacted or amended on or after the effective date, is not valid unless the legislation specifically expresses the intention to limit that right or fundamental freedom, and the nature and extent of the limitation. The other one says that shall not be construed as limiting the right or fundamental freedom unless the provision is clear and specific about the right or freedom to be limited and the nature and extent of the limitation, and shall not limit the right or fundamental freedom so far as to derogate from its core or essential content. 3 of the same article talks of, the state or person seeking to justify a particular limitation shall demonstrate to the court, a tribunal, or other authority that the requirements of this article have been satisfied. The provision of this chapter on equality shall be qualified to the extent strictly necessary for the application of Muslim law before the Qadis courts to persons who profess the Muslim religion in matters relating to persons' status, marriage, divorce, and inheritance. Number 5 talks of, despite clause 1 and 2, provision in legislation may limit the application of the rights or fundamental freedoms in the following provisions to persons serving in the Kenya Defence Forces or the National Police Service. Article 31 talks of privacy. Article 36 talks of freedom of association. Article 37, assembly, demonstration, picketing, and petition. Article 41, labor relations, guys. Article 43, economic and social rights. And Article 49 talks of rights of arrested persons. Rights of arrested persons. So when you are arrested, your rights still remain. Yeah. Let's go to the next article. Fundamental rights and freedom that may not be limited. Despite any other provision in this constitution, the following rights and fundamental freedom shall not be limited. Freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Freedom from slavery or servitude. The right to a fair trial, and the right to an order of habeas corpus, guys. Some of these terms are normally used by lawyers. The right to an order of habeas corpus. Okay, guys, now that one comes to the end of part 1. As I told you before, this one to tackle every part, because Bill of Rights, guys, is very wide. We will tackle every part for its own episode. But part 3, 4 and 5, because they are a bit short, hizo ndashikanisha zote pamoja, then we do it together to malize this Bill of Rights, guys. Okay, so we call it a day. We come to the end of part 1 of the Bill of Rights. I say asante sana for those again wenye wanaendelea watch and subscribing. The most important thing, guys, subscribe, guys, to this channel. My name is Governor and this is Vance Empire TV.